The cage was built while I was smiling, not with bars, not with locks, not with anything. I could point to and say, there, that's when it started. It was built with compliments, with concern, with love that looked so much like protection that I thanked him for it. By the time I realized I was trapped, the door had been locked for 3 years, and the worst part, I had helped him build it. It happened on a Tuesday. I was folding his shirts, the same shirts I'd been folding for years, and that's when I finally saw it, the cage I'd been living in. Invisible, perfect, locked. My name is Emma. I'm 34 years old. And for 6 years, I lived inside a cage so beautiful that everyone on the outside envied me for it. This isn't a story about obvious abuse. There were no black eyes, no broken bones, no police reports. This is about something far more common and far more difficult to escape. Because when the cage is invisible, how do you prove you're trapped? If you recognize the first bar, comment locked, one word. That's all, because what I'm about to describe is happening right now to someone reading this. Maybe it's you. I met him when I was 26 years old. He was older, confident, successful. The kind of man everyone trusted instantly. We met at a friend's party on a Saturday night. He wasn't the loudest person in the room. He wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He stood near the bookshelf looking at titles, holding a drink he barely touched. When I walked over to grab my glass from the table nearby, he said something that should have been my first warning. You look like someone who reads the endings first. I laughed. How could you possibly know that? Because you've been watching everyone all night, trying to figure out how the evening ends before it does. He was right. I had been doing exactly that. But instead of feeling exposed, I felt seen. That's how it starts, not with control, with understanding, not with possession, with attention. So complete you mistake it for love. For love. We started dating 2 weeks later, and for the first 3 months it was perfect. He remembered everything I said, every small detail I mentioned in passing. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answer, actually cared. He brought me coffee in the morning, exactly how I liked it, without me having to remind him. 2 sugars, almond milk. He just knew. My friends loved him. They'd pull me aside at dinners and whisper, "You're so lucky." My mother kept asking when we were getting engaged. Started dropping hints about grandchildren. Even my father, who had never approved of any man I dated, who'd found something wrong with every boyfriend I brought home, shook his hand at Thanksgiving dinner and said, "This one's solid. You found a good one." Everyone could see what I had. A man who paid attention, who cared, who wanted to take care of me, who made me feel like the center of his world. I felt lucky, chosen, safe. The first bar appeared so quietly I didn't hear it slide into place. We'd been dating for 4 months. I was supposed to meet my college roommate for dinner on a Thursday night. We hadn't seen each other in months. She'd just moved back to the city, and I was excited to catch up. That morning, he texted me, "What time is dinner tonight? 7Y. Just want to make sure you're safe. Text me when you get there." I thought it was sweet, protective, the kind of thing a good boyfriend does when he genuinely cares about you, so I texted him. When I arrived at the restaurant, and when we ordered appetizers, and when we were finishing dessert 2 hours later by 9:30 that night, I had sent him 4 separate updates about where I was and what I was doing. When I got home that night, he was waiting on my couch. He'd let himself in with the spare key I'd given him the week before. He smiled when I walked in. Warm, genuine. How was it? Great, we talked for hours. I forgot how much I missed her. I could tell you seemed really happy in your texts. Then he paused, looked down at his hands, did that thing where he seemed to shrink slightly, seemed smaller, more vulnerable. "Can I ask you something?" I sat down next to him. Of course, what's wrong? He was quiet for a long moment, then, "Do you think it's weird that I wanted to know where you were tonight?" "No, why would that be weird? You were just checking in." "I don't know. I worry about you. I know that might sound controlling, but I don't mean it that way, I promise. I just care about you so much that the thought of something happening to you, of not being able to help you if you needed me, It makes me physically anxious. And just like that, in one smooth motion, he turned the first bar into my responsibility, made his need to track me into my job to manage his anxiety. I spent the next 20 minutes reassuring him, telling him it wasn't controlling, that it was sweet actually, that I didn't mind texting him, that I wanted him to feel secure in our relationship. I didn't notice that I had just agreed to check in every time I left, every time I went anywhere without him, forever. The second bar clicked into place 3 months later. I got a job offer, better position at a bigger agency, more money, more creative freedom, my own small team to manage. I was ecstatic. This was the kind of opportunity I'd been working toward for years. When I told him over dinner that night, he smiled immediately, reached across the table and took my hand. "That's amazing, babe. You absolutely deserve this. You've worked so hard." I know I still can't believe it happened. I start in 3 weeks. His smile didn't move, but something behind his eyes shifted. Something subtle, like a door closing very softly. 3 weeks, that's pretty fast. Yeah, they want me to jump on this new campaign right away. It's a big client. He nodded slowly. And it's across town, right? How long is the commute going to be? About 40 minutes. Not too bad. Each way. Yeah. He was quiet for a moment, squeezed my hand a little tighter. "I'm happy for you. I really am. I hope you know that I'm going to miss you. That's almost 2 hours a day I won't get to see you." I hadn't thought about it that way. And with a new team, you'll probably have late nights, client dinners, happy hours with coworkers, getting to know everyone, maybe. I don't know yet. I haven't really thought about the schedule. I'm not saying don't take it. I would never say that. This is your career, your decision. I just want to make sure we're still a priority, that we don't lose what we have here, because what we have is special. You know that, right? Of course, I know that good, because I'd hate for us to drift apart just because you're busy building your career. I'd hate for you to wake up one day and realize you chose work over us. By the end of that dinner, I had convinced myself that maybe the job wasn't worth the potential strain it might put on our relationship, that maybe the timing wasn't right, that maybe I should wait for another opportunity, one that wouldn't require such a long commute, one that wouldn't take me away from him so much. I turned down the offer the next morning, called them and said I'd thought about it and decided to stay where I was. They were surprised, disappointed, but understanding. That afternoon, he sent me flowers at work, 24 roses, with a card that said, "I'm so proud of you for knowing what matters most, for choosing us. I love you." I didn't notice that I had just agreed to make my life smaller, to shrink my ambitions, to prioritize his comfort over my growth, for him forever. The third bar clicked into place when he started managing my friendships, not by forbidding them outright. That would have been too obvious. But by making them difficult, exhausting, not worth the effort. My best friend from high school was getting married. The wedding was in another city, destination weekend, bachelorette party on Friday, rehearsal dinner Saturday, wedding Sunday. The whole celebration. I was her maid of honor. She'd asked me 3 years earlier, before I'd even met him. When I told him about the trip, showed him the dates, explained that I'd be gone for 3 days, he didn't say no. He didn't forbid me from going. He didn't have to. His face did all the work, a whole weekend. Yeah, Friday through Sunday in another city with people I don't know, and I'm just supposed to be okay with that. Just supposed to sit here alone while you're out partying. "You're invited. You can come with me." She said you could bring a +1 to a bachelorette weekend. Come on, that doesn't make sense. I'd just be sitting around while you and your friends do whatever. No thanks. Then what do you want me to do? I don't know what I want you to do. I want you to want to stay. I want this to be a hard decision for you. I want you to care about missing me as much as I care about missing you. That sentence landed like a physical punch because he didn't forbid me from going. He didn't say you can't go. He just made it absolutely clear that if I chose to go, I was choosing her over him, choosing a party over our relationship. And if I made that choice, what did that say about me? What did that say about us? I told her 2 days later that I couldn't make it. Said I had a work conflict that I couldn't get out of. A last-minute project that needed my attention. She didn't believe me. I could hear it in her voice when she said, okay, I understand if that's what you need to do. But she didn't understand. How could she? And I couldn't explain. Because how do you tell someone that your boyfriend didn't technically stop you from going? He just made it emotionally impossible to leave. We spent that weekend together instead. He took me to a nice restaurant on Saturday night, bought me a silver bracelet that I'd mentioned liking weeks earlier, told me over dessert how much it meant to him that I had chosen us, chosen our relationship, chosen him. Most women wouldn't do that. Most women would have just gone and not cared how it made me feel. But you're different, you're special, that's why I love you. I didn't notice that I had just agreed to lose my friends one by one every time there was a choice between them and him forever. If any of this is sounding familiar, part 2 of this story is pinned in my comment below. It explains the control training phase, how the bars get installed, so carefully you mistake them for support. Don't watch this alone. You'll want to see where this goes. The 4th bar clicked into place when I stopped recognizing my own face in the mirror. I was getting ready for a work event, annual client appreciation dinner, something I'd been looking forward to. I put on a dress I'd bought a few months earlier, deep red, fitted through the waist, structured, professional, but confident. I liked the way it made me feel powerful, like myself, like someone who took up space without apologizing for it. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. Didn't look up when I came out of the bathroom. Didn't notice me standing there until I cleared my throat. He glanced up. You're wearing that. I looked down at myself. Yeah, why? What's wrong with it? No reason. Nothing's wrong. You look great. But his tone said something completely different. The way he said great sounded like a question, sounded like a warning. What's wrong with it? Tell me nothing. It's a work thing, right? Yeah, the client dinner I told you about, right? Okay. It's just that dress is kind of a lot. A lot, you know what I mean? It's sexy, and that's great. I love seeing you in it when we go out together. Just the two of us, but for a work thing with clients and colleagues. I don't know. I just don't want people to get the wrong idea about you. Don't want them thinking you're trying to attract attention. Trying to be, I don't know, available. What idea? What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about? That dress says something, and maybe that's not what you want it to say. Maybe you just think it looks nice, but I'm telling you how it reads to other people. Especially men. I'm just trying to protect you, trying to make sure people take you seriously professionally. I stood there staring at myself in the full-length mirror, and for the first time in months, I didn't see confidence. I didn't see power. I didn't see myself at all. I saw what he saw, too much, too sexy, too attention-seeking, too available, inappropriate, wrong. I went back into the bathroom and changed into something else, something navy blue and shapeless, something that covered everything, something that made me invisible. When I came out again, he smiled. That's better. That's much more appropriate. You look professional now, elegant, like someone people will take seriously. I didn't notice that I had just agreed to stop dressing like myself, to stop taking up space, to make myself smaller, invisible, forever. The 5th bar was the cruelest because it came disguised as safety, as love, as him wanting to take care of me, protect me, give me the life I deserved. We'd been together for 2 years, by then living together for 6 months, talking seriously about getting engaged, about marriage, about building a future. One night, lying in bed in the dark, his arm around me, he said something that would change everything, I think. You should quit your job. I turned to look at him. Where did that come from? I've been thinking about it for a while. Just hear me out. You're stressed all the time. You're exhausted. I can see it in your face every morning. In the way you move through the house like you're carrying weight, and I make enough for both of us easily, more than enough. Why don't you take a break? A real break. Focus on yourself for once, on us, on the things you actually want to do instead of what you have to do. I don't know. I mean, I like my job most of the time. I know you do. I'm not saying quit forever. I'm not saying give up your career. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be nice to wake up in the morning and not have to rush out the door, to not have to answer emails at midnight, to not have to deal with demanding clients and impossible deadlines and office politics? Wouldn't it be nice to have time to work on your own projects, your portfolio work, the creative stuff you're actually passionate about instead of just executing other people's visions? It sounded so reasonable when he said it like that, and I was tired. I had been working 60-hour weeks for months. The agency was understaffed after layoffs. Clients were more demanding than ever. Deadlines impossible. I was burning out. I could feel it. But what if I want to go back eventually? What if I miss it? Then you go back. I'm not stopping you. I'm not trapping you. I'm offering you freedom real. Freedom from corporate bullshit and toxic work culture. Freedom to be creative on your own terms. Freedom to actually live your life instead of just surviving it. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Freedom, that's what he called it. That's the word he used, so I quit, gave my 2 weeks notice, told my boss. I needed to take time for myself, to focus on personal projects, to reset. They tried to convince me to stay, offered me a raise, more flexibility, better projects. But I said no. I'd already made up my mind. I needed this break. I needed time for myself. And for the first month, it did feel like freedom. I slept in, woke up without an alarm, spent mornings working on design projects I'd been putting off for years, took long walks in the afternoon, cooked elaborate meals, felt relaxed for the first time in years, felt like I could finally breathe. But by the second month, I started to notice something. I had no reason to leave the house, no coworkers to meet for. Lunch, no meetings to attend, no deadlines to meet, no emails to answer, no place. I had to be at any specific time, no schedule that wasn't entirely dictated by his, and he always knew where I was because I was always home, always waiting, always available. I didn't notice that I had just agreed to financial dependence, to isolation, to having no identity outside of being his girlfriend, to the final lock clicking into place forever. Now here's where the cage becomes perfect, where the architecture reveals itself fully. 3 more bars clicked in rapid succession, so fast I barely registered them happening. He started rewriting my memories. We'd have an argument about something, dishes left in the sink, plans he'd made without telling me, money he'd spent without discussing it, and hours later or the next day he'd bring it up again, say calmly, rationally, "I don't think that's what happened, Emma. I think you're misremembering." And I'd say, "No, I was there. I remember exactly what you said." And he'd look at me with this expression of gentle concern, this patient sadness, like he was dealing with a confused child. "I think you're remembering it wrong. I never said that. I would never say that. You're stressed. You're tired. You haven't been sleeping well. You're not thinking clearly." And because I was stressed, because I was tired, because I was isolated and financially dependent and had no one else to check reality with anymore, no coworkers to vent to, no friends to call, I started to believe him. Started to doubt my own memory, my own perception. Maybe I was remembering wrong. Maybe I was confused. Maybe I was losing my mind slowly. Maybe I was the problem. That's when the cage becomes truly inescapable, when you can't trust your own memory, your own experience, your own perception of reality, because the person who built the cage has convinced you that the bars you're seeing, the ones you keep pointing to, aren't actually real. He started controlling every small decision, what we ate for dinner. He'd suggest pizza. I'd suggest Thai food. He'd sigh this particular sigh, this heavy, disappointed sigh, and say, "Fine, we'll do what you want." We always do what you want, but then spend the entire meal quiet, withdrawn, answering in single words, punishing me with silence, making it clear that my choice had ruined his evening. Eventually, I stopped suggesting anything at all, just agreed to whatever he wanted. It was easier that way. Less conflict, less guilt, less of that terrible heavy silence. What we watched on television, where we went on weekends, how we spent money, what we talked about, when we went to bed, when we woke up. Every single decision became his, and I became so practiced at anticipating what he wanted, at reading his moods, at preventing his disappointment before it could form, that I forgot I had ever wanted anything different. I became an echo of his preferences, a shadow of his desires. He isolated me from my family with small comments accumulated over time. Your mom is kind of controlling, don't you think? Always asking questions about us. Always wanting to know our business. Your brother always seems to judge me. Like he thinks he's better than us just because he has that fancy job. Your dad never really accepted me, did he? I can tell he doesn't approve. Doesn't think I'm good enough for you. Slowly, so slowly, I didn't notice it happening. I started seeing them through his lens. Started making excuses to skip family dinners, Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays. Started keeping phone conversations short and superficial. Started pulling away because it was easier than defending them or defending him or trying to hold both relationships simultaneously without everything exploding. By the third year, I talked to my mother once a month. Brief surface level conversations, my brother even less, maybe a text on his birthday, my father almost not at all, and he would say gently, sympathetically, "See, they don't really care about you the way I do. If they did, they'd reach out more. They'd make more effort to see you, to be part of your life. They're busy with their own things, their own families. They've moved on, but I'm here. I'll always be here." He was rewriting the narrative in real time, making my isolation look like their abandonment, making the cage look like sanctuary, making himself look like the only person who truly cared, and I believed him. I had no other perspective left. My body started keeping score when my mind refused to. I developed tension headaches that wouldn't go away no matter what medication I took, migraines that lasted for days, and left me unable to function, stomach problems that doctors couldn't explain with tests and scans, nausea, cramping, digestive issues that appeared suddenly and persisted. I stopped sleeping well, would lie awake for hours in the dark, listening to him breathe beside me, would wake up more exhausted than when I went to bed. I stopped eating regularly, would forget meals entirely, would sit down to dinner and have no appetite at all. Lost 15 pounds without trying, without noticing until my clothes stopped fitting. Looked tired all the time, hollow, older than my years. People would comment when I did venture out. "Are you okay? You look exhausted. You look sick. Are you eating enough?" And I'd smile automatically and say, "I'm fine. Just been busy, just fighting off a cold, just tired." My body knew before my mind was willing to admit it. My body was screaming that something was profoundly wrong, that I was in danger, that I needed to escape. But I had been so thoroughly trained to ignore my own signals, to prioritize his comfort over my pain, to dismiss my own needs as dramatic or selfish or unreasonable, that I just kept pushing through, kept pretending everything was fine, kept performing the role of happy girlfriend while my body slowly broke down in protest. And finally, gradually, I stopped having opinions about anything that mattered. We'd be out with his friends at dinner or a party. They'd ask me something, "Emma, what do you think about this restaurant? This movie we just saw, this news story everyone's talking about, this band?" And I'd look at him first, automatically, instinctively, trying to gauge what the right answer was, trying to figure out what opinion would make him happy, make him proud, make him not punish me later with silence or disappointment or that particular look. I became an echo, repeating his thoughts in slightly different words, agreeing with everything he said automatically, never contradicting, never challenging, never offering an original thought that might conflict with his, because original thoughts led to conflict, and conflict led to him being hurt, wounded. And him being hurt led to me spending hours trying to fix something I didn't break, trying to manage his emotions, trying to make him feel secure again, exhausting myself completely in the process. By the time I fully realized what had happened, what had been systematically taken from me, I had no money of my own, no income, no job to go back to, no professional network left after years of isolation, no friends who still called regularly or invited me to things, no family I felt close to anymore or comfortable confiding in, no hobbies I still practiced or groups I belonged to, no opinions I could genuinely claim as mine, no sense of self that existed independently outside of him and his needs and his moods. The cage was complete, perfect, invisible to everyone on the outside, and everyone still thought I was lucky, still thought I'd found a man who truly loved me, truly cared, truly wanted to take care of me. People don't understand how cages work when they're not made of metal, when they don't have visible bars you can photograph or point to, when they don't leave physical bruises you can document as evidence. They think you can just leave, just walk out the door, just choose yourself. They think if it was really that bad, if you were really that unhappy you just leave, they think you're choosing to stay that on some level. You must want this. But you're not choosing because leaving requires resources, money to pay for first month's rent and security deposit, a place to go that's safe, people who believe you when you try to explain what happened, who don't immediately ask why you stayed so long. And if you've been systematically stripped of all three over years, where exactly are you supposed to go? How exactly are you supposed to leave? The truly diabolical thing about an invisible cage is that the person inside it spends most of their energy trying to prove it exists. Not to the person who built it, he knows exactly what he built, but to themselves you spend years thinking, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe this is normal, maybe all relationships require this much sacrifice, this much compromise, this much shrinking of yourself to make room for another person. You think he never hit me, he never screamed at me, he never called me names or threw things or threatened me overtly. He just loves me intensely, protectively, possessively. Isn't that what I wanted? Someone who cares this much? Someone who pays this much attention? You think if I just explain it better, if I just make him understand what he's doing, he'll change, he'll see it, he'll fix it. But he already sees it. He built it intentionally, methodically, carefully, one bar at a time, and he has no intention of dismantling it. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March, unseasonably warm sun coming through the windows. He was at work, I was alone in our apartment, and I was folding laundry, folding his shirts specifically. The same shirts I'd been folding for 3 years. The blue one he wore to meetings, the gray one he wore on weekends, the white one he wore to dinners, and I had this thought that arrived, fully formed, complete, undeniable. When was the last time I made a decision? Not a small decision, not an insignificant choice, not what to make for dinner or which movie to watch or what time to go to bed, but a real decision, a meaningful decision about my life, my future, my body, my time, myself. I stood there with one of his shirts in my hands, trying to remember, trying to locate a single moment in the past 3 years where I had chosen something without his input, without his approval, without considering first how it would affect him. And I couldn't remember a single decision I'd made independently, every choice. I thought I'd made only after checking with him, first after considering his feelings, after weighing whether it would upset him or hurt him or make him feel insecure or threatened or abandoned. I hadn't made a decision in 3 years. I had only ever reacted to his. I had only ever moved within the space he permitted. I had only ever existed in the shape he preferred. That's when I realized, standing there alone in the afternoon light with his shirt in my hands, the cage wasn't locked 3 years ago when some dramatic thing happened. It had been locked the moment I started asking permission to exist. The moment I started believing I needed his approval to be myself. The moment I accepted that his comfort mattered more than my autonomy, more than my selfhood, more than my life. The process of leaving in an invisible cage is not like leaving a bad relationship, because to leave a bad relationship, you have to convince yourself it's bad. You have to overcome denial and hope and optimism. But to leave an invisible cage, you have to convince everyone else it exists first. You have to prove that the thing nobody can see is real, that the bars nobody can touch are there, that the pain nobody witnessed actually happened and continues to happen. I started small. I didn't pack bags dramatically. I didn't make ultimatums or demands. I didn't confront him with a detailed list of everything he'd taken from me systematically over years. I just started taking things. Back tiny things, invisible rebellions, small acts of reclaiming myself. I signed up for a freelance project, a small design job I found online through a contact from my old life, something I could do from home in a few hours a week. Pocket money, autonomy, a small piece of myself that existed outside of him. When he asked about it, casually over dinner, "What are you working on today?" I didn't ask if it was okay. I didn't explain why I wanted to do it. I didn't justify or apologize. I just said, "I'm doing this." None I was thinking about doing this, not would it be okay if I did this, just I'm doing this. I took the project. He looked confused, genuinely confused, like I'd spoken a language he didn't recognize, like I'd broken a rule so fundamental he didn't realize he'd have to state it explicitly. "Okay," he said slowly, carefully, his tone measured. "I just think you should have talked to me about it first, before committing to something, before taking on work. We should make decisions like this together as a couple." "I'm telling you now," I said, and went back to eating. That was the first bar I'd bent, the first crack in the structure, the first moment I chose myself over his comfort, and it felt terrifying and exhilarating simultaneously, like stepping off a cliff and discovering you could fly. 2 weeks later, my old friend called, the one I'd abandoned for him years ago, the one whose wedding I'd missed, whose calls I'd stopped returning. Her voice was careful, distant, like she was talking to someone she used to know, someone who'd hurt her. "Hey, Emma, I know we haven't talked in a while. I know things have been complicated, but I'm going to be in town next week for work. I thought maybe we could grab coffee if you're free, no pressure. I understand if you can't." He was sitting across from me at the kitchen table when she called. I could feel him listening, even though he was pretending to read something on his phone. I could feel his attention focused entirely on me. I looked at him, he looked back at me, and I said clearly, distinctly, into the phone, "Yes, I would love that. Let me know when and where, and I'll be there." He didn't say anything, but I could feel the air shift, could feel the temperature drop several degrees. When I hung up, he asked in that carefully neutral tone, "Are you sure that's a good idea, reconnecting after all this time? It might be awkward. It might bring up old stuff, complicated feelings. I just think you should consider whether it's worth potentially disrupting what we have here." "I'm going," I said. "I want to see her. I've missed her." "Okay," he said. But his okay meant this will have consequences. His okay meant you're choosing her over me again. His okay meant I'll remember this. That was the second bar. The third bar broke when I opened a bank account he didn't have access to. I went to a different bank in a different neighborhood on a Wednesday morning. Told the woman behind the desk I wanted to open an account in my name only. She asked routine questions. I answered them simply, honestly. She handed me paperwork. I signed it, walked out 40 minutes later with a debit card that was entirely mine. Money that would exist outside his awareness, outside his control. He never knew I did it. I didn't tell him, didn't ask permission, didn't explain or justify. I just did it, and that small act of financial independence, of having money that existed in a space he couldn't access or monitor or question, that felt like breathing deeply for the first time in years, like remembering what oxygen tastes like reclaiming a small piece of territory that belonged only to me. The fourth bar broke when I started applying for jobs again. I updated my portfolio late at night when he was asleep, spent hours rebuilding it, remembering skills I'd forgotten I had, rewrote my resume, crafting it carefully, sent applications to agencies I'd been following online, positions that interested me genuinely, work that excited me. I didn't tell him I was looking, didn't mention it casually, just did it quietly, secretly. When I got an email back requesting an interview, I scheduled it for a morning when he'd be at work. Told him I had a dentist appointment, bought a new outfit for the interview the day before. Not navy blue and shapeless, not something he'd approve of, but something I liked. Something that made me feel like myself, read again, structured, confident, powerful. I changed into it in a coffee shop bathroom 20 minutes before the interview, looked at myself in the mirror under harsh fluorescent lighting, and for the first time in years, I recognized the person looking back at me. Not completely, not entirely. She was older, more tired, more damaged, but she was there, still alive under everything. The fifth bar broke when I stopped apologizing for things I didn't do, when I stopped managing his emotions as if they were my responsibility. He would come home in a bad mood, stressed from work, frustrated with traffic, annoyed with a coworker or a project. And I used to immediately go into damage control mode, asking what was wrong, trying to fix it, trying to soothe him, taking responsibility for his emotions even when they had absolutely nothing to do with me, absorbing his mood like a sponge, making it mine, managing it for him. But I stopped. I let him be in a bad mood. I didn't absorb it, didn't make it about me, didn't apologize for existing in the path of his frustration. Just said calmly, neutrally, "Sounds like you had a rough day. I'm here if you want to talk about it," and then went back to what I was doing. Reading, working, existing separately from his emotional state. He hated it. He'd try to pull me in, try to make me responsible for fixing his mood, managing his emotions, but I wouldn't bite, wouldn't engage, wouldn't take the bait, and that distance, that tiny space I created between his emotions and my responsibility for them, that was revolutionary. That was freedom beginning. That was the cage starting to dissolve. The sixth bar broke when I started seeing a therapist. I found one online who specialized in relationship issues, emotional abuse, codependency patterns of control. Made an appointment for Thursday morning. Didn't tell him where I was going, just said I had an appointment. He asked what kind. I said personal. He pressed, tried to extract more details. I said it's personal. I'll tell you about it if I want to, but right now I don't. His face did that thing. That hurt, confused, wounded thing, but I held firm, didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't apologize. The therapist's office became the first space in years where I could speak freely without fear of consequences, where I could say things like, "I don't think this is normal. I think something is wrong with my relationship. I think I might be being controlled," without someone telling me I was overreacting, being dramatic, remembering incorrectly, misunderstanding his intentions. The therapist listened carefully, asked questions that made me think, made me examine my own patterns and beliefs, reflected back what I was saying without judgment, without trying to fix me or change me or convince me of anything. And slowly, session by session over months, I started to see the cage clearly, started to understand its architecture, started to name what had been done to me, started to recognize it as deliberate rather than accidental. The seventh bar broke when I told my mother the truth. I called her on a Saturday morning when he was out, when I knew I'd have the house to myself for a few hours, and I said without preamble, without easing into it, "Mom, I need to tell you something. I haven't been okay for a long time. I've been isolated and controlled, and I didn't know how to say it because it doesn't look like abuse from the outside. There are no bruises, no yelling, no obvious signs, but I feel like I'm suffocating, like I'm disappearing, like I'm dying slowly." She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, hear her processing. Then she said softly, "With so much love, it broke me. I know, sweetheart. I've known for a long time. I've been waiting for you to be ready to hear it. Waiting for you to be ready to leave. Tell me what you need. Tell me how I can help. I'm here. We're all here." I broke down crying right there on the kitchen floor. Sobbed so hard I couldn't breathe because someone finally believed me without needing proof, without asking me to justify or explain or defend myself, without making me prove that my invisible cage was real. The eighth bar broke when I started planning my exit logistically, not just emotionally or theoretically, but concretely, practically. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop, something I could close quickly if he came home unexpectedly. Calculated exactly how much money I'd need for first month's rent and security deposit. Moving costs, basics to start over with. I started saving from the freelance work, $20 here, $50 there, depositing it into my secret account, building slowly, patiently toward freedom. I researched apartments in my price range, figured out which neighborhoods had good public transit since I'd need to get to work, which ones were safe, which ones I could afford on my own without help, made detailed lists of what I'd take and what I'd leave. What was genuinely mine, what was his, what was ours, but didn't matter anymore. Planning gave me control, it gave me agency, it gave me a timeline. It gave me concrete proof that leaving was possible, not just a fantasy, not just something I thought about but never acted on, but an actual achievable goal with specific measurable steps I could take. The ninth bar broke when I told him I thought we needed couples therapy. I knew he'd say no, knew he'd make it about me being the problem, but I needed to ask, needed to give him one final chance to see what he was doing, needed to be able to say later honestly that I tried everything, that I exhausted every option before I left. We were eating dinner pasta he'd made, sitting across from each other at the small table. I said it calmly, directly. I think we should try couples therapy. I think we need help. I think we have serious problems we can't solve alone. He looked up at me, fork halfway to his mouth. What? Why would we need therapy? What problems? We're fine. I'm fine. We're good together. This is good. I'm not fine, I said. I haven't been fine for a long time. I think we have communication issues, control issues. I think we need professional help to work through them. He put his fork down carefully, shook his head slowly. This is your thing, Emma. This is you projecting your issues onto us. I'm the same person. I've always been. You're the one who's changed, who's become distant and cold, who's pulling away from me if anyone needs therapy. It's you individually, not us as a couple. His refusal, his complete unwillingness to even consider that he might be part of the problem, that our relationship might need work, that he might have contributed to my unhappiness. That was the final confirmation I needed. That was proof that he saw the cage perfectly, knew exactly what he felt, understood completely what he was doing, and had absolutely no intention of unlocking it or dismantling it or changing anything. The 10th bar, the final bar, the one holding the entire structure together, broke on a Sunday evening in late April. He was watching a basketball game. I was sitting on the couch next to him pretending to read a book, but actually gathering courage. And I said it clearly, firmly, without apology or explanation. I don't want this anymore. He didn't hear me at first, or pretended not to, kept his eyes on the television screen. What? I don't want this relationship anymore, I said louder. I don't want this life. I don't want to be this person. I want out. I'm leaving. He turned to look at me then, really looked at me, studied my face, and for the first time in 4 years, I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Not anger, not sadness, not hurt or confusion, but panic, actual genuine panic, because he understood in that moment, the cage only works if the person inside believes they can't leave. The moment you stop believing that, the moment you understand that the bars were always just in your mind, were always just manipulation and fear and learned helplessness, they disappear. The entire structure collapses. Leaving wasn't clean. It wasn't empowering in the way movies show it. It was in a triumphant moment set to inspirational music with a montage of me packing confidently while he watched helplessly. It was terrifying, messy, heartbreaking, chaotic. I moved out on a Thursday while he was at work. My brother and a friend helping me load boxes into a borrowed truck. I took only what I'd come with, originally clothes, laptop, books, some photos from before him, left behind all the furniture, all the kitchen things, all the accumulated objects of our life. Together, because none of it felt like mine. All of it belonged to the person I'd been pretending to be for him. I'd been living in his world, playing a version of myself he'd written and directed, performing a role he'd cast me in, and I didn't even recognize her anymore, didn't want to be her anymore. Would rather start completely over with nothing than stay one more day being someone I wasn't. I stayed with my friend for 2 months, slept on her couch in her tiny one-bedroom apartment, cried more than I thought was humanly possible, grieved not just the relationship but the person I'd been before him, the years I'd lost, the version of myself I'd never get back, the time I could never reclaim, mourned the life I could have had if I'd recognized the cage earlier, if I'd been stronger, braver, smarter. And slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice it happening day by day. I started to come back to myself, not the person I was before him. That Emma was gone forever lost, but someone new, someone who'd walked out of an invisible cage, someone both stronger and more fragile simultaneously, harder and softer, more cautious and more brave. It's been 2 years since. I left. I have my own apartment now, small studio with big windows, my own job at a boutique agency that values my work, my own money in my own account, that nobody else can access or monitor my own life that belongs entirely to me. And I still sometimes catch myself asking permission for things I don't need permission for. Still hear his voice in my head when I make certain decisions. Still feel guilty for choosing myself, for taking up space, for wanting things, for existing loudly. That's the thing about invisible cages. Even after you leave them, even after you walk out and close the door behind you, you carry the bars with you. They're imprinted in your nervous system, embedded in your reflexes, woven into the way you move through the world, the way you interact with people, the way you think about yourself and your worth. Freedom isn't a place you arrive at and then stay forever. It's not a destination you reach and then relax. It's a practice, something. You have to choose consciously every single day, sometimes every single hour, sometimes every single minute. Some days I choose it easily, naturally, without thinking, wake up feeling free and light in myself. Other days I have to fight for it, have to remind myself actively that I'm allowed to exist, allowed to want things, allowed to take up space, allowed to have opinions, allowed to say no, allowed to choose myself, but I choose it. I keep choosing it because I know now what I didn't know then. The cage is only as strong as your belief that you can't leave it. The bars are only as solid as your certainty that they're real. And the moment you stop believing that, the moment you look directly at them and see them for what they really are, manipulation and fear and learned helplessness disguised as love, you're already free. You just have to be brave enough to walk out, to keep walking, to build a new life. Here's what I wish I'd known 4 years ago when I met him at that party, when he stood by the bookshelf and said I look like someone who reads the endings first, when I felt seen instead of exposed. Cages aren't built in a single day. They're not constructed in one dramatic moment you can point to and say there. That's when it happened. That's when everything changed. They're built in moments so small you don't think to write them down, don't think to mention to anyone, don't even register as significant until much later when you re-looking back, trying to understand how you got here. A text you send to check in because he seems worried at dinner you cancel because he seems. Disappointed a dress you change because he seems concerned. A friend you stop calling because he seems hurt, a job you turn down because he seems anxious, a boundary you don't set because he seems vulnerable. Each one feels like nothing, like a reasonable compromise, like what love requires, like being a good partner. But together, they're everything. Together, they're a cage. Together, there's a systematic dismantling of your autonomy disguised as care. And by the time you realize what's been taken from you, what's been systematically removed piece by piece over months or years, you've forgotten what it felt like to have it. You've forgotten what freedom tastes like, what autonomy feels like, what it means to exist in the world without constantly checking whether you're allowed to. That's how you know you're in a cage, not because you can see the bars clearly, not because anyone else can see them when they look at your life from outside, but because you can't remember what it felt like to be free, can't remember the last time you made a decision without checking first, can't remember who you were before you started shrinking yourself to fit into the space he created for you. If you're reading this right now and something in your chest just tightened, if something in your stomach just dropped, if your breathing just changed, if tears just started forming, pay very close attention to that physical response. Not because I'm telling you what to do, not because I'm saying you should leave. I can't tell you that. Nobody can make that decision for you. It has to come from inside you. But pay attention to that feeling, because that tightness, that dropping sensation, that physical response, that's your body trying to tell you something your mind has been trained to ignore. Your body trying to send you a message that your thoughts have been systematically taught to dismiss as dramatic or oversensitive or unreasonable. You used to take up space in the world without apologizing for it. You used to make noise. You used to want things without feeling guilty for wanting them. You used to have opinions that were yours alone. You used to have friendships that existed independently. You used to have dreams that didn't require anyone's approval. You used to have a self that existed whole and complete without needing to be completed by someone else. And if you can't remember the last time you did any of those things without checking first, without explaining, without justifying, without making sure it was okay with someone else, without managing someone else's feelings about your existence, you might already be inside a cage. You might already be trapped. You might already need to start planning your escape. The cage doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It doesn't arrive with warning signs and red flags and alarm bells. It doesn't look like a cage at all from the outside. It looks like love. It looks like care. It looks like protection. It arrives with someone who says they love you more than they can stand. Someone who says they just want to take care of you. Someone who says they just want to keep you safe. Someone who says they just want you to choose them. Every single time, over everything else, over everyone else, over yourself, forever. And by the time you realize that's not love, that's ownership, that's not protection, that's control, that's not care, that's cage building, that's not safety, that's captivity. The door is already locked, and you're the one who handed them the key without realizing what you were giving away. My name is Emma. I'm 34 years old. I didn't leave because I finally got strong enough to leave. I didn't leave because I reached some mystical threshold of courage or self-worth. I left because I finally noticed I was caged. I finally saw the bars clearly. I finally understood what had been done to me. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you name it, you can't unname it. The bars are only invisible until you look directly at them, until you call them what they are. Then they're everywhere, and you realize they were never real to begin with. They were only ever as strong as your belief that you couldn't leave. They were only ever in your mind, constructed carefully over time through manipulation and fear and isolation. And the moment you stop believing in their power, they disappear. Tomorrow, I'll tell you about the first time he made me apologize for being alive, for taking up space, for having needs, and how that single moment taught me the difference between love and control training. That's when I understood with absolute clarity that the cage wasn't an accident. It wasn't a series of misunderstandings or miscommunications. It was architecture, it was design, it was intentional. And once I saw that, I couldn't stay another day.